Good morning. It's Monday, February the 15th, and this is The Drill. And now the prayer of the day. Prepare to engage the enemy. My child, prepare for battle. As a good soldier of my Son, Christ Jesus, you must endure your share of suffering. Your enemies are my enemies, and just as I hate those who rebel and refuse to obey me, so you must also hate my enemies. Separate yourself from Satan and from anyone who gets entangled with the affairs of this life. Remember the power available to you through my Son. There is power in the blood of my Son. His blood cleanses you from all sin. Give no place to the devil, but be sure that you operate in righteousness. My righteousness will give you confidence and boldness. My righteous servants are as bold as a lion. Engage the enemy boldly, and my protection will be your covering. Father, you have seated me through Christ in heavenly places, far above all principality and power. You have equipped me to engage the enemy and have promised that I will be victorious through you. I stand boldly ready to use your weapons of warfare to utterly destroy the enemy and all the works of darkness. I will not turn back until they are all destroyed. Amen. So I am Ron, your host and the only true conservative in the United States today. As I say, welcome to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there. One of the things that came up this morning as I was listening to good old Hugh Hewitt was George-Gascon, the Los Angeles County District Attorney, and the fights and whatnot that are going on there. He's come out and created an agenda for his time in office, the things that he wants to do. He wants no assistant district attorneys to be present at parole hearings, and he's not going to use any enhancements. So that means that if you are convicted of murder, then you do, 15 to 20 or 20 to life or something. But with enhancements, you might get much more than that. 30 years, 40 years, etc. So he's going to knock off the enhancements, and the individuals that have been found guilty of murder will come up for parole sooner. And then, if you're not going to have any district attorneys show up at the parole hearings, then there is, of course, a more likelihood that they're going to get out. The Gascon keeps, when these facts are brought to his attention, just tries to weasel out of it. And he really doesn't do much speaking at all. It's usually one of his lieutenants, his second in commands kind of thing, his Marxist lieutenants that say, well, but very few people get out on parole statistically speaking. Well, yes, that's because we've always had assistant district attorneys who show up to parole hearings to fight the paroling of that particular individual. So they play little word games. They tell the truth, but they don't tell the whole truth, or they tell the truth, but they don't say nothing but the truth. One of the favorite tactics of the left in this situation. So, and what's going to be interesting, though, is the battle that is getting set up or squaring up between the police unions in this county, sheriff's union, and all the police departments in the county and their unions against BLM, because BLM they don't give a damn about all of these other points that Gascon wants to make. Mass incarceration is his watchword, and that we need to stop mass incarceration. Of course, he doesn't define mass incarceration. He leaves that definition wide open so that he can define it any way he wants to, whenever he wants to. But the BLM people want him to go back into previous cases of police shootings. They voted for him specifically to get into office so that he could prosecute police officers. That's what they want. And if he actually starts doing that, I think that's going to be an interesting and actually, well, I don't know. We'll see. I was going to say bloody, but I don't know. Again, I'm loath to make predictions on this, but certainly there will be some sort of a battle, political or otherwise, between the police officers and Gascon, who's going to act as the mouthpiece for BLM if Gascon indeed tries to. And if he doesn't, then I imagine that he's going to get to square off against his supporters, his BLM supporters, who will be doing whatever they can to drag him out of office. So we'll see exactly how that works. So far from Gascon, nothing on the police departments. Everything is basically about to hell with the victims. Now we actually have somebody on the county board of supervisors that's backing Gascon and saying that, and is trying to warp reality by suggesting that the families of the perpetrators, of the guilty, the people that have already been found guilty, are victims. And they are victims as well. And that's bizarre. There's no other way of putting it other than bizarre. They're not victims. They are, I feel sorry for them, maybe, depending on whether or not they actually had anything to do with the criminal's state of mind. If it's his parents and they raised him poorly, maybe if he's a gangbanger and his parents are gangbangers, I don't feel sorry for them at all. They raised their child to be a gangbanger, and this is the results. And as my grandmother used to say, you get what you deserve. So, but that's the latest on George Gascon. I live in LA County. I voted for Jackie Lacey, and I blame the fact that Gascon is in office on her, and more specifically, her husband. Things were going okay. She was leading, not by a whole lot, but she was leading until her husband pulled a gun on BLM members. So that was easy to get her out then, because Jackie Lacey happens to be black. Her husband, I assume, was black. I don't know that for a fact. But so it's black people pulling a gun on black people. So it's very easy for BLM to go to the black community and say she is not one of us. She's not down for the struggle. She's not black. And they turn their backs on her. So if her husband had kept his cool, if both of them kept the cool, pick up the phone, call the police department. You're the district attorney, and you got people that are banging on your door at 5 o'clock in the morning because they want to talk to you, allegedly. Actually, what they want to do is just agitate you into making some type of a mistake. You call the police. That's all you have to do. Pick up the phone. You got a hotline to the, I'm sure, to the chief of police, right? So you just pick up the phone, call the chief of police. If you're awake at 5, he's going to be awake at 5. And you're going to tell him, you drag your buttocks down here and fix this now. And why there wasn't a police presence at her house to begin with, I don't know. But again, neither here nor there, and it's all water under the bridge. But her fault, her husband's fault, that George Gascon is district attorney today. He backed into it. And then has the chutzpah, the gall, but typical of the left, is to declare a mandate. I was elected with a mandate. And of course, he decides what that mandate is. He doesn't point to any proof or evidence that what he says the mandate is actually is a mandate. Which, of course, like I said, if you back into the office, you don't have a mandate. You're expected to just pick up where your predecessor left off. So I'm listening to Hugh Hewitt and this morning, and again, typical of Hugh Hewitt, lazy Catholic Hugh, who is not on the air. He's on the air, but it's a recorded, and it's an interview on top of that. Instead of recording himself, it's the Hugh Hewitt show, but instead of recording himself saying things, it's all about President's Day. And he has a guest professor on that's going to lecture us about presidents from Washington to Trump, and maybe a little bit about President Joe. That's what I'm going to refer to him from now on, as President Joe, because apparently that pisses him off. And I want to see to it that he stays pissed off for 4 years. He doesn't enjoy a second of his illicit presidency. But anyways, so Hugh Hewitt, again, Mr. Lazy Catholic Hugh Hewitt, he makes good money from what I've found out on Google. Punch in and do your damn job, Hugh. Get off your lazy ass and spend most of your time. You got a 3-hour program, and you don't even have to talk for 3 hours. You got news, you've got commercials, so you get, and those news and commercials happen every 15 minutes. But you can't be bothered to speak between those 15 minutes. You got to find somebody else to hide behind callers, hide behind guests, and that's what he's doing today. So they're blathering on about the presidents, and last I heard that they were on Coolidge or something. They were getting close to Nixon because they just went on break, and he says that the professor's going to have about 10 minutes to get through 5 presidents. But anyways, that's the thing that you got to think about. Again, if you're listening, no matter what you're listening to or what you're watching, you have to think your way through it. And the first thing to do is listen to the little voice in your head that says something's not quite right. That's what I do with Hugh Hewitt. That's always when I turn on a show and I think something bothers me here. Hi, I'm Hugh Hewitt, and he's got a half-ass voice. It's a half-ass decent, not like there's there's a couple of particular broadcasters that are absolutely abysmal, absolutely awful voices. They're just not even worth listening to. So at least he's not Rush Limbaugh, he's not Glenn Beck by a long shot. Glenn Beck's got the best voice of right-wing talk show hosts, and Rush Limbaugh has the second best voice. But anyways, is somewhat worth listening to. So, you want to listen to what it is that he has to say, as I do, and listen to that little voice in your head that tells you when something isn't quite right. If it's the style or the way that he programs the show, or if it's content. If he says things, and at first blush it sounds good, but that little voice in your head is saying, I don't know, something wrong here. Figure out what it is. Stop and think, what is it that's bothering me about what it is that Hugh Hewitt or Sean Hannity or Mr. Gorka is saying that bothers me. This is what Ayn Rand said. This is one of the things that is overlooked. Many things are overlooked about Ayn Rand. She was a brilliant woman. She was an absolute genius. But most people overlook all the smaller things that are so essential. And one of them is listening to what I call your conscience. She called it that little voice inside your head, but I call it your conscience. You have a conscience, and that too many people will hear that bell ringing, telling them something's wrong, but they blow it away. They blow it off. They say, what do I know? I'm not a broadcaster. What do I know? I don't write a newspaper column for a living. What do I know? I'm not on television. No, wrong. You know a hell of a lot more than you give yourself credit for. The idea is to take that alarm seriously and try to figure out what it is that's bothering you. And then that way you're going to have the courage to critique people like Hugh Hewitt. Hugh Hewitt counts on people not being stupid, but on being timid. That they're going to be too timid to listen to that voice inside their head, and too timid to go ahead and find out what it is that's bothering them. And so he's able to get away with not only with making mistakes. It's human to err, but it's stupid to make the same damn mistakes over and over again. And so Hugh Hewitt and people like him count on your timidity to continue to get away with making the same damn mistakes over and over again. And we end up with what? The same. No matter what the left does, we get Mr. Moderate, Mr. Center of the Road, Mr. Zero Hewitt analyzing it. Not talking about how outrageous it is, not talking about how indignant it is, what affront to human dignity that the left is doing here, how they're lying. He does none of that. He doesn't do anything to express his outrage. You listen to Hugh Hewitt, he never gets outraged about anything. He's a machine. He's just a computer. Garbage in, garbage out, that kind of thing. So, and he's not, and he shouldn't be. He's allowed the left to brainwash him. And the way they did it is with the word understand or understanding. But again, that's all things that I figured out because I listen to that little voice in my head that says, I don't know, something. He brags about what he's a lawyer and he's worked here, he's worked there, this administration, that administration. It's all intimidation. It's all to intimidate the audience. Don't dare to argue with me. Like Rush always says, don't doubt me. And Rush uses his audience size to intimidate people, to intimidate people that would criticize him. I have last heard 90 million people for Rush Limbaugh. 90 million. Good for him, but I'm not going to be intimidated. If Rush says things that are wrong, and if he's stupid about it, he makes the same mistakes over and over again, I'm going to feel free to criticize him. And the same thing goes with Hugh Hewitt. Law degree or no law degree. If you're wrong, and you need to correct your mistakes. So again, with Hugh Hewitt and his President's Day, I refer to it as a holiday. Anyways, President's Day presentation where his pre-recorded laziness, where he has a professor dominate his program and lecture us all on these presidents, is the thing for a conservative. And again, he considers himself center-right, but this is another instance where he contradicts himself. Because all conservatives do the same thing. They make the same basic fundamental mistake, historically speaking, by lionizing and concentrating on political figures and saying that it is the political figures in this country that make the difference and have made a difference and shape this country, and ignoring not only the common man, but the people that really built the country, and that's the tycoons, the Carnegies, the Rockefellers, at all. Those are the people that actually built the country. And if we're going to have a day to celebrate the people that actually created and built this country, then it should be Tycoons Day, for lack of a better term. And that's what we should be celebrating instead of going and looking at the presidents. Now, he's going to do it anyways, and if you're going to do something, do it right or don't do it at all. And so he does this wrong, typically. I mean, he does so much wrong on his show, so I don't know why I would be surprised he does this wrong as well, is that he looks, and everybody that does things historically, whether writing a book or telling a story or, on audio or video or whatever, the problem is they don't link historical events to the present. Because the only reason to be interested or fascinated by history is to find out how we got here. To ask yourself, where are we now and how the hell did we get here? How do we go from Washington, George Washington, and the American Revolution to punks in the street in Portland and Seattle and elsewhere trying to burn the city down? People pulling down monuments of Washington and others that we revere. Some of those monuments deserve to come down and should have never been put up in the first place, the Confederate ones. But how did we get there? How do we get to this particular point? And that's where the study of history is useful, understanding politics, understanding culture and cultural changes. So the idea would be put things together. How did the Washington administration lead to the Jefferson administration, and on and on and on? Nixon opened the door to China. Okay, so what? How does that put us in the position that we're in today? How did that get us to the situation we're in today? And so Hugh Hewitt doesn't do that, but he should. But in any case, you and I can do it separately. We can look at history and stop and think about that question. How did we get here? How do we, culturally and politically, and look to the past to try to find some answers? And there'll be certain things that will ring a bell, so to speak. It does with me. I hear certain things, certain phrases, and I remember back in, say, the mid-'90s when the Soviet Union was dissolved, and I remember politicians talking about a particular subject and trying to, for instance, when the Soviet Union dissolved, and everybody was in America was in disarray politically, had no idea what to do. It came as a complete shock, by the way, when the Soviet Union fell. Everybody was just stunned because we had overestimated the political and military and cultural and economic strength of the Soviet Union. Turned out that most of the Soviet Union was really what we called at the time a Potemkin village, which was just a facade. That they talked a good game, and they since they controlled the media, they could project whatever image they wanted to, and they always consistently projected images of strength. But behind the scenes, it was a different story. And so, but politically, when we had the Soviet Union, everybody knew where they stood. If you were anti-Soviet Union, you were on the left, you were a Democrat. If you were anti-Soviet Union, you're on the right, you're a Republican. If you're pro-Soviet Union, you're on the left, you're a Democrat. So everything in life, what we're going to do domestically, was defined by the Soviet Union. The left wants to emulate the Soviet Union, and the right says, no way. Foreign policy was all about whether or not we should contain. There was containment. There was détente because, of course, we had nuclear weapons and the constant threat of global thermonuclear war. So that is, and it's what's fascinating is that no one, I've looked for it and I can't find a single book written about the dissolution of the Soviet Union and how it affected American politics. One thing that happened right away when the Soviet Union fell is George H.W. Bush, George I, was the president at the time, and he came out, of course, because he's the biggest sissy on the planet. He comes out and says, we're not going to celebrate. Well, of course we should have celebrated. We had a 50-year Cold War with the Soviet Union. When it crumbles, even if you don't want to declare victory, we can at least say it's over. At least celebrate the fact that it's over. No, as far as George I was concerned, then it never happened. The dissolution of the Soviet Union really never happened, and the whole Cold War really never happened. You're kidding me. All that time and energy on nuclear weapons and détente and negotiations for this, that, and the other thing, all the people that lost their lives around the world in useless, aimless, worthless civil wars. The Soviet Union was all about creating instability worldwide, going into Africa, going into Central and South America, and trying to create instability and insurrection and revolution everywhere it went. And when the Soviet Union disappeared, all of those conflicts around the world overnight stopped. Because the rebels in all those countries were no longer getting weapons, ammunition, and money. Even the Irish Republican Army in Britain sued for peace immediately as soon as the Soviet Union went down. So it was all of a sudden it's a completely different world. Again, celebrate, if nothing else, we had world peace for the first time in God knows how long. We had World War II, which then begets the Korean War, which begets the Vietnamese War, and the Korean and the Vietnamese War were wars against communism. It's no longer about fascism or Nazism, but communism. But anyways, so that begets that, which beget the Cold War between the United States and the Soviet Union, and various proxy, what they referred to at the time as proxy wars, which were little civil wars around the country. And one of the big talks or issues of the day was containment, whether or not we're going to contain the Soviet Union and its expansion, creating satellite states, or not, and or how it is that we're going to contain the Soviet Union. And like I said, Soviet Union goes bust, everybody They were stunned. I was stunned, but it was interesting to see the reaction of the politicians. One of the politicians at the time said, "We should decide elections based on the issues." And then, of course, it is the left that decided what the issues were, and so now we're stuck with them to this day. Abortion is the issue, environment is the issue, et cetera, et cetera. And so that's where we get into issue politics. Prior to that, it was, again, basically where you stood, or the battle was always about where you stood in relation to the Soviet Union. Yes, you had the parties going and having conventions and creating their planks of their platforms, but it was still basically everything was in relation to the Soviet Union. So when it's gone, people are stunned. They don't know exactly what it is that they're supposed to be doing. So one of the things we can and should do as conservatives, true conservatives, is celebrate the dissolution of the Soviet Union, which I believe happened in December or January of 1994, and celebrate that fact. Also, people make a mistake with regards to the Soviet Union. Well, as a matter of fact, I'll get into that when I come back. So, with regards to the Soviet Union, a lot of people think that the dissolution of the Soviet Union settled the issue of capitalist versus communist, and that was it. That communism lost, capitalism is superior, etc. It doesn't. The battle between the Soviet Union and the United States was basically, this Cold War was between governments. If anything, the dissolution of the Soviet Union proved that strong central governments are de rigueur, and that they're indispensable. That what it really said is that fascism is the way to go. Not capitalism, not communism, but fascism. Because that's what we have going in our country more and more, is and the difference between fascism and, say, Nazism, fascism is all about you can own a business. You can own a big conglomerate if you want to, but the government reserves the right to tell you what to do with that business. Regulation, i.e., that kind of thing. And that's the way they did things in fascist Italy. And you look at China today, and you see that they have gone basically from being communist, nobody gets to own businesses, all businesses will be owned by the state, to a fascist model in which businesses are allowed, private businesses are allowed, but it is the state that will tell those businesses what it is that they're going to create, when and how, and in what amount. So if you want a better indication as to whether or not, which is better, capitalism or communism, you look at the Olympics. In the Olympics, then those were also like little mini Cold War battles. Every time we had the Olympics, it was always between the Soviet and what was called the Soviet bloc and Americans and Western nations. And we got into medal counts. Who had more gold medals, who had more medals overall, et cetera, et cetera. But if you look at those, the reason that it's a good barometer or indicator of the strength of capitalism and or communism is because the Soviet bloc, everything's run by the government. And so what they would do is find promising young athletes, and then the state would pay to basically turn them into professional athletes. They would take them from their parents and put them in schools in which their gymnastic or other talents are fully developed, and that's all they do. The state will pay them to do basically nothing else other than go to school, learn your ABCs, etc. But then when you're done with that after school, you're going to be in gymnastics, and you are going to do nothing but gymnastics until whatever, you're too old to do it, and then I guess you can go and dig a ditch or something. But the point is, looking at medal counts and whatnot, because in the United States it was all done privately. The government, even though they were representing the United States, all of the people that were athletes, used, I think there's the American Athletic Union, the AAU, but it was all done with private donations and whatnot. I'll stick with all done with private donations, and so again, done with in a capitalistic fashion. So if you really want to get a better idea as to which is a better system, capitalism or communism, that's the direction to look in. And not only looking in that direction, but there was many female athletes in Eastern Germany and in the Soviet Union that were given steroids of various sorts, and they became rather androgynous. A lot of news people, so-called journalists at the time, would make note of that, of these Eastern Bloc female athletes that had broader shoulders and bigger muscles than many of the men that were competing. And so it became obvious to everybody, kind of a running joke, because of course the Soviet Union said, no, we're not giving them any steroids, we're not pumping them up. This is just they're just naturally stronger than weak capitalist running dogs and that kind of thing. So, but if you want to get a good idea as to whether or not which is better, communism, capitalism, look in that direction rather than saying the end of the Cold War signifies that capitalism was better. It wasn't capitalism that destroyed the Soviet Union. It was a strong central government because, after all of the ICBMs, intercontinental ballistic missiles, that the country has doesn't belong to Raytheon or companies like that. They're not held in private hands. They're public. They belong to the government. So all the weapon systems and that the United States was using a lot of tax money to do research and development for further weapon systems that eventually bankrupted, in essence, the Soviet Union. So, but that was a battle of governments, not a battle of corporations versus a government, but a battle of governments. So that concludes another episode of The Drill. And be honest, be smart, be beautiful. This is Ron, and that's The Drill.